IGP Chronicles. I'm Jaquasia.
I am Chris.
And we're driving. Because that's all I feel like we do all the time is drive. But we had a work thing, so we figured we would at least talk while we have to drive 3 hours home. So that's why I'm not going to be looking at the camera, because I'm going to look at the road.
I'm going to look at the road too. This woman be driving crazy, y'all. She be driving crazy.
I drive crazy? Are you serious?
Driving crazy.
Are you serious?
Woo.
You literally hit the rumble strips all the time.
Pray for me, y'all. Pray for me.
I literally am the best driver in the family.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. That's a whole thing, because I am a better driver than you. Let's not even go there. The only thing you can do better than me is park a trailer.
Okay.
That's it when it comes to driving. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say about that. And so today I kind of want to talk a little bit about judging. And I don't know, I guess all aspects of judging. Obviously, I've said before, I hope to become a judge one day. You've been a judge before, so trying to find the happy medium of how to improve judging, because I feel like it's one of the things that people complain about the most is judging. So I feel like when we come out of a championship or even a club trial, any trial, one of the things that is like mentioned first or complained about first or talked about first is judging.
Well, yeah, that makes all the sense. I mean, you have two people that are part of the trial that's staples that have to be there, but not a part of your training through the performances. And that's the judge and the helper. And the track there, really. So when you go to a championship, I mean, you might know the helper, you may have been on them before, maybe not. Track layer, same thing. And the judges, whether you know them or not, if you've been under them or not, the judging is going to affect the whole feeling of the trial.
Yeah. There's always that talk too, specifically at championships, because there are 2-3 days of the consistency of the judging throughout like the weekend. And I've always heard, even you have said this sometimes, like, you always draw. I feel like since we've traveled together,
I am notorious for drawing first round.
First pair, and you're the first dog, or you're at least the first pair. It happens often that you're like on the field in the stadium first.
Early on Friday, one way or the other.
And so it's always like, I think you're a little bit less about it now, but you were definitely like, oh, the judge's pencil's always sharper on Friday. And it's like a common theme I hear among competitors that, Friday the pencil's sharper, and by Sunday it's not.
I don't know that it's sharper or not. I just think that sometimes there's a bar that's typically set, and I feel like it's hard to set that bar very early on in the competition with some judges. Some, I think not. I mean, I was proven wrong twice.
Yes.
With my own performances and with two different judges, which was very glad to see that. At WDC this past year at the obedience, it was very interesting. I really wanted to watch that first pairing because Dad was the first dog on the field. We all knew he was going to make nice obedience, so it was kind of interesting to see how that was going to play out. And hats off to Bob, 96 right out of the gate, first dog on the field, via routine. And I feel like it's with a lot of judges, it's hard to give up that big score early on because there's still so many dogs to come and they want to set a bar or whatever. And that bar is fine as long as it's consistent throughout the whole trial. Like if your pencil is sharp,
then keep it sharp.
Keep it sharp from Friday morning to Sunday afternoon. And doesn't matter who's on the field and what they're doing, just judge what's in front of you, and I feel like that gets missed sometimes.
I think too, though, like we've had Bob in Johannan for regionals, and we really liked his judging because it was so consistent. And he's one of the judges that still actively is training, which is a whole other thing that we'll discuss at some point. But yeah, championships, it does seem to be a running theme of people do get nervous that going Friday is going to mean something very different than going Sunday, which it's hard because it is a long weekend to be watching that many routines. However, after I read both the requirements for becoming an AWDF judge and becoming a USCA judge. I mean, becoming a judge takes a lot. You have to judge 80 dogs, I read, for USCA, as you are an apprentice. So they're conditioning you to, like, you have to judge a lot of routines back to back to back to back and be able to maintain that consistency. AWDF, I think it was 48 dogs you have to have under your apprenticeship. So it's quite a few less, but it's still a very large number of routines that you're judging in order to become a judge. And I know USCA has the Judges College you have to go to maintain your continuing education. It would be... It's hard to, like... I guess it's not hard, because there are judges who do it, who actively train and trial as well as judge. But it's hard.
Yeah, it's more difficult because when you're training and trialing, and you're also gone, a weekend or two a month at minimum to go judge somebody else, then you're missing that training time. Right. So it makes it more difficult that way.
But at the same time, like helpers do it. And you have more respect for the helpers who have seen both sides of everything.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, yeah, they're a helper, but also if they're competing, they know what it's like to be on that side. So they're going to try to be very fair because they know they don't want to be the reason something bad happens in your routine. Obviously, we're all human and there are mistakes, but when you're used to both sides, I think you definitely have a better perspective of it. I think, too, though, this is the thing I think is difficult about the judging program right now. You can, obviously, in order to be a judge, you have to train a dog, or, 2 dogs from BH to 3, another dog from BH to 1, have the breed survey, the AD, the FH, and all of that stuff, specifically for USCA. But once you get that, you could just become a judge and then never have to train and trial again.
Right.
Which I think is the difficult part, because if you were training and trialing dogs 10 years ago, it's very different than if you're trialing and training a dog now.
Yes.
So I think you lose kind of what the sport has become. I think that's the hardest part right now is, well, yeah, I trained a dog 10 years ago. Okay, great. Well, the title has changed 3 times since then. I mean, I've been in the sport for 14 years, and they were weaning off of Schutzen titles when I got in, and it was becoming IPO, and now it's IGP, and now we have USP titles. So it's like, it's just a very different sport, and the dogs are different, and what they're looking for on a world level and national level is different.
The things that are allowed are different. I mean, the things you can't have once that rule book's turned in is not the same as it was then. I mean, there's been times where you've taken your prong or electric collar off at right there at the edge of the field and go out, and that's not allowed anymore. So,
right. You can't even, and like healing sticks, something like that, you can't even have once, you're inside, your rule book's in, it's nothing. First saver, that's it. So that's, I think, what people are looking for now is to try to figure out how to incorporate a rule where that becomes a thing.
Well, the problem is not every, but some of the judges that are not actively training a dog for whatever reason, and that doesn't matter, but it's like you forget the amount of work it takes to make a V dumbbell, or a send out, or a bargain hold, or clean outs, or whatever, V track. You forget the amount of work and hours it took in the training to make that trial day possible.
Right.
And because you feeling some type of way that day about whatever, you are extra critical about this or that, or not. Extra critical is one way to put it, or in some areas, like not necessarily at a championship trial, it is what it is. Like you step on the field and what happens happens. So we're not even going to talk about that for right now.
But we know at a club trial.
But at a club trial, it's
you can be a little more forgiving to try to encourage people to stay in the sport.
There should be some feeling involved.
Yeah.
There should be some heart involved. Whenever you have someone that has never trialed, or somebody that's, you hear the stories about this is their umpteenth time trying to get the 1 or the 2 or whatever with this dog, and the dog doesn't go out and kill it, but he's right there on the ragged edge, and in the grand scheme of things, like, nothing's going to change the sport or the breed by this dog achieving this title, and you're right there on the ragged edge of he could pass or he could fail. What's it going to hurt to make them people go home and feeling good and want to get another dog and train different, better the next time?
Well, we're not talking like if there's a 10-point.
No, I'm not talking about.
But like if there's 2 or 3 points, you can find a point or 2 somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between a 67 and a 70.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in some aspects, sometimes you can't, but there's a lot of cases where you can. And
there's some cases where you don't want to.
Yeah, that too.
if you the 67 and the handler comes out there and has an attitude or has done things that you've told him not to do multiple times,
right.
You say don't touch the dog and they keep touching the dog or whatever, or they've got an attitude or however, then the 67 is just 67. But
right.
I judged a dog one time and I trialed a little north of here, and it was an older gentleman judging, or trialing rather, and he'd been working in a factory for, I forget how many years it was, could never commit to schützen fully enough to title a dog, and he finally retired from this factory floor, and his back and knees were beat to pieces, and he had a really nice dog, and he wasn't, obviously an older gentleman, and he could barely make it up the field for the obedience routine, and he was walking slow, and the dog was trying to go, and he held it together, and it was on the cusp and bite work, but he ended up making it work out, and he got the title. And to my knowledge, I don't think that guy ever trialed again. He just had fun with his dog from that point forward, and that was the end of it. And to be honest, that was probably the highlight of my judging career, was judging that dog that day at a club trial in Virginia. It was like, that was, to know that all the years he spent on the sidelines watching finally culminated into that moment, and that finished it out. I slept well that night.
Yeah. I'm sure he did too.
Yeah. But it's certain things you have to know, like, what it takes to get to that point. And I think that whenever you don't have the leash in your hand, you forget what it takes, and you take it for granted, and you think that these dogs just come out of the womb going and grabbing a dumbbell and bringing it back, or doing long bites from long distances and out from long distances, and this beautiful barking hold and everything, and that's just not how it is.
Or even like on the other side of that, like not understanding a truly powerful dog.
Yeah.
And understanding that, like, it's okay to be powerful, and the points are what they are, but in the critique you can say something to say, that this is a powerful dog and it has a lot of drive, but it has a couple things, maybe it's a little vocal or something like that. But I mean, these dogs, we want them to be powerful.
Ideally.
And so not thinking that the dog is going to be a robot and a powerful dog is not going to be, especially on a lower level where they may not have the experience or the knowledge to train that kind of dog, but recognizing that they do have a very nice dog. I think that's where a lot of times it gets missed. It's like you almost are sometimes discouraged by having a powerful dog because you won't make the points. And I know, like, for me with Zakan, that's been one of the things. I'm like, I'm not sure we can make the points everywhere because some of my weaknesses as a trainer and the power of the dog, but also, like, that's who he is, and I'm not gonna like completely crush that because I like it.
Yeah.
So then becomes kind of difficult when your critique is just like you're just getting knocked down because you don't have the points, and they're not recognizing that the dog is a nice dog.
Right. Well, there's one thing that has to happen, and when you're a judge, and whether the dog is a nice dog or a dog is not a nice dog, if that failed, you still need to fail them nicely, politely, and encouraging them to come back and try again. Because if we run everybody out by being assholes about it, then there's no sport left. I've judged a lot of different things through life, and I was very close to quitting Schutzen very early on. I did not have a nice dog. I had a pretty good little American Bulldog female. It was the first dog that I titled, and to a title. And the first few trials was under SV judges at the club that I was a part of, and these judges just was like I was wasting their time being on their field. And at the end of the last trial, I told Richard, I was like, I'm out, bud. I said, you can have all this. Your European buddies can have fun with it. I'm out. I'm gonna find something else to do.
Look at the rainbow.
Yeah. And he told me no, that there was another trial coming up in a month, and the few people from that trial that had problems were going to go to RSA, and we were going to trial under Carla Griffiths, and I had no idea who that person was at that point in time. And that was the first person that actually gave me. I actually passed that trial, but she also gave a lot of encouraging words and was the whole reason that I stayed in Schutzen. And then that's how every trial should be.
I mean, even when I had the absolute horrible debacle at Northeast Regionals, I think it was 2019.
Oh, yeah.
And Briscoe just wanted to heal. I think he did dumbbells, and like that was it. He did healing and he did dumbbells. He did no motions.
Yeah.
And I think he did some send out, but it was horrible. But the judge was just like, we don't need to go through every single thing. He mentioned that he had really nice dumbbells, but he just really liked to be with me, so he just healed the whole way. And without like making me feel I felt absolutely horrible enough. Like we didn't need to make me feel even worse about it.
Right.
But he was like, he has nice dumbbells, but obviously you need to work on some other things. And so it was like, okay, great. Thanks for not going through every single thing, because like I get it. He was terrible. But then it was just like, okay, back to the drawing board, but not completely frustrated with like the dog. Well,
the experience.
Yeah, the experience. Yeah, I didn't want to get out of the sport at that time. I was just like, okay, we need to reevaluate his training, and I thought he was somewhere he was not.
And on the flip side, all of this, like if you switch it up to a championship level, and sometimes we as competitors expect the judges to be robots.
Yeah.
And whenever we go back and we're watching it on Working Dog or whatever, and we're rewinding and going back and rewinding and going back, and you got to remember, like, that judge had a split second to see whatever it was that you're going back and rewinding and pausing, and
yeah, there's no instant replay.
There's no instant replay in Schützen. There's no timeout, nothing. There's no TV timeout or nothing. Like, it's like
one and done.
They have to get the call. Hopefully it's right, and we move on. And sometimes it's not right, and when it's not right, doesn't mean necessarily that they were cheating or trying to give the other person points or take points from the other person. They're all human too. It's like, no, we're not expecting them to be perfect, but sometimes we want them to be, and that's not feasible either.
Yeah. Agreed.
When you are judging on the sidelines and you think that this is this points and that points and all this, then it's definitely not what it looks like when you're on the field with the clipboard in your hand and you're trying to be aware of where you are, where the handler is, where the dog is, where the helper is in protection, where the track layer is on the track and field. Like, you're trying to make yourself not in the way of what's happening, but in a spot where you can see what's happening, and trying to almost be as invisible as possible and try to catch everything. And you're trying to do all this, in very fast motion. So it's
a lot to think about all at once.
It's a lot to do and make right and get right.
That's part of the reason I'm so nervous about thinking about it. It's like there's so much to do to catch all at once.
And there's a lot of notes that you have to take in the process of doing that.
Yeah.
So most every judge that I've known has some type of, their sheet is set up so that they can just do some hieroglyphics, basically, is what it all boils down to, because that's what it looks like most of the time, of what's a fast sit or a slow sit or a fast recall or a half grip or a quarter grip or
right.
One side shallow or whatever, to try to get it all right. And then on top of all that, you have to stand in front of everyone at a championship or a club trial and give those points out and why those points were given out, and be able to stand on that and know that that's what you felt like it was. And again, that's not an easy task either.
Yeah.
Because giving a critique is a whole thing in and of itself.
Right.
I mean, you kind of have to a little bit develop a style for that. And I feel like there are some really, really, really good judges that do really nice critiques, and there are some that are pretty lackluster. But for me, when I go to the trial, obviously I kind of know where I'm at as I'm going, but I want to hear the reason that I got high SG or low SG or high satisfactory or whatever in that whatever exercise it was, what they saw, because I don't always agree either, so I need to know what I'm missing in that moment as well.
Right.
Which leads to another topic I guess we can kind of put in here.
I have one question though before you don't lose what you're about to say. Would you ever go back to judging again?
I've attempted, and I've sent emails out to the president and the director of judges, and I've yet to get a response.
Even if they did respond now, you think you'd still go back?
I would like to say yes.
Do you miss judging?
I miss judging club trials a lot. Seeing all the new people, helping the new people. My famous line was, the very first rule of a BH is, don't you? And all the newcomers are like, what? It's like, well, you got to breathe. Because people got there so nervous, and you got to help them out and try to relieve them a little bit and make them feel better about it. And then when things go well, awesome. When they don't go well, you got to let them know that there's another day.
Yeah.
I didn't pass my first everything either, so But when getting into this whole judging thing, I don't think any person has the right to complain about any score they get if they don't know how the score was arrived. If you don't know the scorebook, the rule book, and you don't know what categories are, what exercises get each category, and what the points are for those categories, I don't feel like you have any room to complain about anything the judge is doing. Because if you haven't done due diligence enough to know that when he says you got high SG in a down out of motion and a shifting or IGP3, if you don't know how many points that is when he says high SG, then I don't feel like you got any room to complain. If you want to play at the top of the game, you have to know the rules and the points in the game.
Yeah.
What is it? What's what you preach all the time?
What?
Read the
rule book?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't. I mean, like, there has been discussions. Obviously, the rule book is not perfect, and there is a lot of room for improvement and for clarification within the rule book.
But it's what we got.
But you have a rule book to go off of. So you train to the best of your ability based on what the rule book says. If there's an issue at a trial, though, and you feel like it's flat out cheating, you can bring up a BOI, no?
Yeah, I mean, you can handle it whichever way.
You can file a complaint if you really feel like or you could always, there's channels in which you could complain if you feel like a judge is not judging properly, essentially. Like,
yeah, but if you have to know if he's even judging properly.
Right, but I'm saying, if you do know the rule book and you've read it and you carry it with you and you read it often and you know the rule book and you know the categories, and all you do though is complain about it, but you don't actually go through the proper channels and like talk to board members and your regional director and the director of judges and whoever else is on, your president, vice president, and all of them, directors at large, then if it's, consistently the same judge, there's clearly a problem there. So that's where I get frustrated. Like, it's great to bring awareness about stuff. Like, people should bring awareness and like say, like, this happened at this trial and this is not right. Okay, now what's the next step after you've said, like, this is not right? Did you like follow through? Did you write an email? I'm going way too fast. Did you like contact the right people, or did you just bring awareness about it and then not follow through? Because if you don't follow through, nothing will ever change.
And that's all fine, well and good, and you're 100% right on that. But I mean, the chances of there's going to be something that's going to happen in your career if you're in this for very long that's not to your liking, and there might be something you can do about it. But there is 100% of the time that you go on the field that you should know how the points are arrived.
Right.
If you don't know, like at our seminar that last year, we did a running down and said for everybody to give it a category rating and then a point rating.
Right.
And the number of people that said that it was a good, but then gave it 6 points or something like that was like, if you call it good, then you have to know how many points good is.
Right.
If you call it very good, you have to know how many points very good is.
Right. Yeah.
That's the problem that I have. Is like most people, and I'm going to go on a limb and say most people don't know the point breakdown, and especially if you're trying to play at a high level. On the 3 level, you have to know what every exercise is, what the points are, and where the categories break out.
Right.
So that you know how to maximize the points that you have.
But
right?
Sorry.
You know where you're wasting time training and where you should spend time training.
Right, but then again, too, you can't complain if you don't know.
Right.
But once you know, you have to follow through on stuff. You can't just bring awareness and then not do anything officially to actually bring about change. Because I think that's where we're stuck right now, especially with social media being such a big thing, is people are aware of situations a lot more now, which is great. But then it's like, okay, what happens next?
Yeah, you can get complain about it on Facebook all you want, but that's not going to do anything.
But like, if you do complain about it on Facebook, enough people know now. So now, everyone knows, which is great.
Everybody can know, but if there's nothing's handled.
I know.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
though.
Exactly.
So then once you bring it to everybody's attention and you see that you have all the support about it, then it's like, okay, well, I know you support me in this and you support me in this. By the way, I'm going to do this next, and I would appreciate support in it. Like, for us, USCA has general board meeting this year at National. They have it every year, but this year it's an election year. Who are you electing to make sure that the same shit doesn't keep happening? Did you, bring a motion to the meeting minutes so that you can, try to make people more aware of stuff and try to bring about change? Or are you just not following through and that's it? That's where I think we're kind of stuck with everything, not just judging, but with the rule, just with everything in the sport. Is it's like, okay, well, we're annoyed and we're paying money to this or to any organization, and we expect this. Okay, but if we don't hold them accountable, then we can't really say shit, honestly. They're elected officials.
Right.
At the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's night. Speaking of election year, I'm interested to see if anybody new runs for office.
Yeah.
Ooh, big bump.
To see who's going to do what and who's staying in line and who's staying where they are and who's trying to move around.
It's hard because it's like if you tell people you're running, they could try to sabotage you early. But then if you don't tell people you're running, people don't know that you're running until it's too late. I mean, the best thing is for everyone to be at the board meeting, make the trip to nationals, and vote. I can't stress that enough. But you can only hope that people do the right thing and vote for the right people. I will probably get slashed for saying this, but why is Jim Alloway still hold office in USCA?
Good question.
After all the craziness that he pulled and all the craziness, sorry. He's done so much obnoxious shit. Why does he still hold office in USCA?
Don't know.
There's no reason for that. It's the same people running, and it's the same people holding office, but it's the people that got us in half of our problems. Why vote for somebody like that? I don't understand it. We'll probably have no one watching our podcast after this. But there's so many other good people in our organization.
At the same point,
so many.
You have to have people that are willing to do something for free.
Right, but I think we have those people, but they're afraid to, because you end up like Mark Scarberry, where they harass you and crazy stuff. I stand by what I said. Jim Alloway did try to start AWDC, and it did put us in a tornado for a little bit. It's time for somebody new to be on the board.
I agree with that.
We have all these active people in the sport, either competing or helpers or holding trials and running championships successfully. And I feel like many of those people who actually truly love the sport are afraid to run because it puts a target on their back.
Yeah,
And that's not fair. Like, being in, I'm like, you know, low on the totem pole. But being on the board for the last 2 years, I feel like put a target on my back. To where I personally don't care anymore. Like, whatever. I love the sport, and I'm going to do the sport, and I'm going to still have integrity and do what I think is best. And if I never get reelected, then it is what it is. But I shouldn't feel like I've had a target on my back when all I wanted to do was make things better.
No, I agree with that. The problem is, like, you have so many people that have been in this position for so long that they've concreted their way in, and the only way to get through that concrete is for them to say, okay, I'm going to move over now, I'm going to put this other person in a spot, and it's just been like,
excuse me.
I
don't think they'll move over, though. I think you have to, like, push them out is the thing. And that's what people are afraid to do, because they don't want to ruffle any feathers, and they don't want to have, you know, issues in whatever aspect. But they're not going to move. They're comfortable is the problem. You have to make them uncomfortable so that they have to move.
The biggest problem with a lot of leadership is they're all old. I mean, whether you're like, I'm not saying you got to be 70 or 80 to be old, but I mean, I'm 52. I'm old.
I know you're.
So
if I said that,
you get above that,
you can say it. So it's cool.
You get above that. I mean, it's to the point where the average age of this sport is old,
which is a problem.
Problem in of itself, and then you're not allowing new things to come up and be said, and new ideas, and it's just like that Shields Canine podcast where it went back and forth about is Schützen dying or whatever, and it's like the sport is not dying as far as people wanting to do it. Yes, there are still big club trials. Yes, there are big championships, for sure. The point of that was not that people aren't still getting into it. At least that's not what I took from it. The point I took from it was all these old people that are still trying to claw onto it with their fingernails for the last piece of it. They're not allowing newness in. They're not allowing, like, there is zero social media presence.
Or it's a hazing to get in. It's like you have to go through all these trials and tribulations and jump over hurdles to be accepted into the frat. Like, that's not right either.
But there's zero social media presence, which is what today's world is. If you go look up PSA, they're all over the place. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, they're everywhere. Because they're not trying to hide what they're doing, and they're allowing a younger generation to help push their sport into a different level, different realm. And
it's too much.
Irish could be that way, but they're not allowing people to do it.
They lack the willingness to loosen the reins and to give up control. They're too controlling and too micromanaging, and that doesn't make it fun for, you know, even the 40-year-olds to want to get involved, because nobody wants to be stressed doing a hobby. Like, that's not enticing. This is a hobby. This is fun. This is what we do in our spare time. And if it's adding stress to my life, well, then I don't want to do it. Like, that's
the problem is you're asking dog trainers that micromanage everything their dogs does to give up control of something that they're trying to control, like their dog. And that's not going to happen. What should happen is the head of the organization should probably be a business person that's more concerned about what's actually supposed to be the mission statement and worried about the German Shepherd dog breed and making business moves to handle those things based on business rather than based on what they think is the answer to something they're passionate about. Because if you're passionate about something, you are going to have your own set of standards and your own way of thinking, your own beliefs on what that should be, but that doesn't mean it's right. It means it's your right.
The problem is there's too much politics instead of business.
Right.
Like, you have to delegate things out. And you can't be good at everything. And you can't only rely on 3 people to do everything. And the more that you involve the members that are paying to be members, the better the organization will be, because you have no idea, like, the talent you're missing out on. Some people are really good at, obviously, certain things. You have no idea what they are good at if you don't reach out and ask and figure it out. And that's what a good leader does. They figure out who's good at what, and they don't micromanage them. They tell them, hey, you're good at this, okay, go do it, report back to me, and the end. That's how it is.
Yep.
But if you can't figure out how to do that, then, well, number one, you're not a good leader. And if you only think 3 people can do it, well, in an organization the size of the dog sport organizations, you just can't do that. And I think there's a lot of people who would love to be more involved, and I really think there's a lot of untapped potential within the organization and within the membership, but it just, like, there's too much of a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and they know they won't be able to do it their way, and their way is probably better than the way you're thinking, so they just keep their mouth shut. Or they leave and go to another organization, which, like, defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah, the problem, a big problem in his organization is if you have an opinion, you have to either the opinion has to fall in line, or you have to be okay with not being in the inner circle if your opinion doesn't fall in line.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line. Because if your opinion doesn't fall where everyone thinks it should, then if you think outside the box you'll be.
We'll see what happens this election year. I'm like at the edge of my seat and hoping that there's some kind of change and something happens, just something, anything. And like, even people who have been in the sport for a long time finally, like, get involved and realize that, like, it needs to be changed. And, like, the fighting between the organization, it's hard because that's the other problem, is, like, trying to get along with all the organizations is exhausting. But if you can try to better your own organization, then maybe you can, I don't know, fix relations with other ones. But it's hard to fix relations with another organization when you have your own members bashing you. So, I don't know, it's kind of a ramble, but with us getting closer and closer to nationals, it's like heavily, I know it's got to be on a lot of people's minds. Like, hopefully it is, and if it's not, it should be.
I've always been of the opinion, as far as that relations thing goes, is
whoa, I'm going way too fast.
If you will fix your own backyard, other people will want to come and play in it. So if you just make your own thing right and don't worry about what anybody else is doing, don't keep score of what they're doing, don't be concerned about what they're doing, fix your own shit, make it right, and then before you know it, they'll have no choice but to do something different, because they won't have anybody left. Because if there was one organization that was doing everything correctly, then there would only be one organization. And I think that's what people fail to see.
Yeah. I like how we're such dog people that as we're driving, if we see a grassy area, we both look, because we're thinking tracking. Like, we both looked at the field, we're like, ooh, nice green grass. The whole way there and the whole way back, every time we see a large patch of any kind of greenery. We're like, huh, that looks like good tracking.
So, all right, guys, thanks for riding with us for a little while, and see you next time.
See you later. Bye.